Hello, hello. Well, welcome to this live stream on YouTube. I'm just going to bring across a load of people from the previous setup where I was trying to be clever and stream with OBS Studio, and that hasn't really been possible for some reason. So I'm just going to let people know that if I can get onto the chat, or perhaps people will be able to bring themselves through a notification to here. Let me just see if I can get us live here. Okay, so I think we've got 6 viewers. Can anyone join the chat and let me know that you're here? And if anyone's in the chat in the previous window, can you let people know that we've moved to this video here? Excellent. So I'll just wait for some people to come across. Say I got everything set up, everything in place, got all of the tech stuff sorted out, and then for some reason YouTube was telling me through OBS Studio that my account wasn't enabled for streaming. Checked the settings, of course my account is enabled for streaming, and lo and behold, here we are. So thank you for attending this live presentation. Interesting to have a little fault at the last hurdle, 1 minute into the video, having spent 10 years on this project, couldn't share it with people, and in the last 1 minute there's a technical hiccup. So I guess that is always the case. So, but I'm glad to be here, glad you're here, and any questions in the chat, I can see that quite clearly. I'm just going to move my windows around so I can see where I am. Hello in Chile, hello in France, hello in the USA, hello in the UK as well. So what I'm going to be doing today is announcing and previewing and discussing our latest book and course, a bit about the behind the scenes background of that, and basically, rather than tease it out, it is the spiritual key to the tarot, and it is a full analysis, commentary, and introduction to the ideas of A.E. Waite in the Waite-Smith tarot. And in particular, it brings out the spiritual path and the way of mysticism that is encoded into the Waite-Smith tarot. So that's it, that's the announcement, and that's what we've been working on for the last 10 years. Now, I'm going to go through some books, and I'm going to hello Peak Flow. You've not missed anything. I've just introduced the idea of last minute hiccups in a 10-year project being in the last 1 minute, and that is literally all I've done, other than announce that this is the spiritual key to the tarot, and it is in effect the third part of a trilogy that was started with Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot and then continued in Abiding in the Sanctuary. Interestingly enough, I found a promo picture for Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot that was Tali Goodwin's desk at the time, and I put a note on the promo video to say there were several Waite books that we were looking at, and perhaps there would come a time for further analysis. And that was 10 years ago. This book was published in 2015. I think we started the research and writing in 2013, 2014. And so this is mainly on Pamela Colman Smith. This is the book that really brought out Pamela Colman Smith's work particularly in the minor arcana and all of the theatrical side of that. So, for example, we have, as people I hope are familiar with now, things like, did I just see that? So the Nine of Cups being modelled on Falstaff, which is exactly why the character has the hat, has the flagons in the background, and is sitting on a bench and has an unbuttoned shirt and so forth. It's the exact quote from Falstaff, and that's not the only place that it was. And virtually all of the minor arcana can be easily explained by Pamela Common-Smith's previous work and theatrical work and Shakespearean quotes and Book T, most importantly, Book T of the Golden Dawn. So the minor arcana, the best book for them technically is the Book T from the Golden Dawn, even though it's the Waite-Smith deck. And then just before the publication of that, we had been working on Tali's rediscovery of the Waite-Trinic images in the British Museum, and these gorgeous images that belong to the FRC, the mystical group that Waite founded after his 2 attempts with trying to work with the Golden Dawn. And obviously we have the drawing down of the moon here for the High Priestess, long before Gerald Gardner sort of utilised that phraseology for the drawing down of the moon. Here's a nice illustration of a literal drawing down of the moon in the Waite-Trinic images. Now, these were never meant to be a deck. These are for temple use. And here we have a picture of Waite, actually drawn by Edward Hop, and there's another one that was drawn by Trinic as well, who designed stained glass windows and designed these gorgeous images for use in temple work, in ritual work, for the FRC. So we have what Waite really intended with the tarot, and we have what Pamela Coleman-Smith did with the minors and the theatrical background. What was left then was to look at pictorial key to the tarot, And people have always found this a difficult read, so what we decided to do, and we proposed this to Llewellyn, our publisher for the Waite-Smith tarot book, we proposed an annotation, and we worked on it for, we've been working on it a lot over the last couple of years, although the reading and research for it started quite a while ago. Anyone joining from the other instance, and we have 43 people, thank you very much for joining. I will come back and do some of the first bit towards the end so that you don't miss anything, and this will be available as a recording. So this is the Spiritual Key to the Tarot, our latest book and course, more particularly course, because we proposed the annotation, or we actually proposed the Spiritual Key to the Tarot to Llewellyn and then worked on it. And then, thank you for pasting the URL into the other videos chat window. Thank you very much. And then started work on it. And we brought together all of our research and our reading of, and this has been sort of hidden in plain sight over here, all of these. And I have a wonderful video that I could have shared if I'd got my OBS software sorted out. Over here, these are all first edition Waite books. So over the last 10 years, we've been buying first edition Waite books, and I've got something to show you. For example, this gorgeous one here, A Book of Mystery and Vision by A.E. Waite. How gorgeous this book is. And so we've spent a decade, 10 years, really reading A.E. Waite, massively studying Waite, all of his work, all of his writings, and more particularly his mysticism and his spirituality. When we finally came to submit it, and the deadline had been extended a couple of times for various publishing things, it was difficult because we already knew by that point, had an inkling that Llewellyn might actually not want what we had finally managed to produce, because it was so much work to actually try and make it accessible, to make Waite accessible, and make Pictorial Key to the Tarot accessible. And once we started, I think we realized just why no one had attempted a proper full annotation of Waite's work, because of the layers of spirituality, academic sources, and his style of writing, which we explain in the book, The Spiritual Key to the Tarot. We actually explain how to read Waite and what some of the issues are. But Waite has been entirely misunderstood. And so we aim to set that right with the Spiritual Key to the Tarot. So what happened was we submitted it. Llewellyn got back to us after a rather longer pause than we're used to, and then said basically, I think we know this isn't really going to work for a general audience that is just going to find this book on a shelf in Waterstones, and out of the blue think that it's a book about reading tarot, because every single book on tarot is about how to read tarot, how to do some spreads, and so forth. And this book is actually an explanation of what every single symbol is according to Waite. Actually, according to Waite, when he talks about it in Pictorial Key to the Tarot, what is he talking about? Why is the card like that? What are the symbols? What did it mean to Waite? What was he intending to do with the tarot? And we know what he was intending to do, because 10 years later, in secret, he designed the major arcana for his FRC, Fellowship of the Rosy Cross Order, and as a result, he felt that would be secret, so he could write what he wanted and design what he wanted. But it was already part of the deck, the Waite-Smith Tarot. It was already built into this. It was just seminal within here of what he was trying to do. But once we knew what he was trying to do, then it became a bit easier to start to open Pictorial Key to the Tarot. Can I ask in the chat window, we've got 54 people viewing, which is great. How many people are really, really familiar with Pictorial Key to the Tarot, which in effect is the little white book that comes with this deck? This is the deck. This is the designer, Waite. Common Smith was a co-designer, particularly on the minor arcana and artist of the deck. But how many people are really familiar with Pictorial Key to the Tarot? I'm just wondering if anyone can say in the chat window. Yeah, familiar with the little white book. So there's a version that sometimes gets printed with a sort of very, very cut down version. Me and Coach, read it when about 11. Some of it was over someone's head, the Rider Penguin. Yeah, we've got about 7 versions of Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and this is the, excuse me, the one that I've tended to use for reference. So, yeah, it is pretty dry reading, isn't it? Yeah. So what we did was we worked through this. We spent several years actually annotating, making a commentary and so forth. And then we realized that obviously with Llewellyn that wasn't going to fly with them, and we mutually agreed it was very friendly and stuff. We all fairly aware of, with given it our best attempt to make it a sort of pull off the shelf book, but not quite got there. And so as a result, we have got the material back, and even better, it means we can now add a load of stuff that we couldn't have added if it had been a standard general release, a mass market release. So what I'm currently doing, and I'll sort those out in a second and show you, is just before we publish the book, I'm adding a lot of Waite's interpretations of the cards that he actually put in a book published under his pseudonym Grand Orient. And this is another problem with the book, Pictorial Key to the Tarot. It is, in a sense, a bit like, I had the Thoth book out earlier on, can't remember where I put that, badly written for modern reading. An editor would go through this and say, well, it's all very interesting, but then you've got a load of stuff at the back on the meanings of the cards, like for general interpretation, but why isn't that at the bottom of each of the actual cards? So you've got some stuff in the back and some stuff here. Why not just put it all on the card? Because a reader is going to look at the card and want the interpretation in the same place. And so what we've done is we've collated all of the different bits of reading and interpretations and put them all in one place. So that was one of the mechanical jobs of reorganizing Pictorial Key to the Tarot. Then what we had to do was really try and understand Waite's spirituality and theology. And as we talk about in the book, the problem is that even people who knew him his whole life didn't quite understand him. And however, in his own words, he does make it fairly clear. We can actually parse that out after a few years of reading everything he wrote. Then it sort of becomes clear, and you can test it by then opening another book and saying, does this gel with what I think I understand about Waite? And one interesting thing is that Aleister Crowley is responsible for the worst mudslinging hatchet painting job on Waite of all time, I think. Now, as far as I know, I've never found a reference in Waite to Crowley. It must have driven Crowley mad, because Crowley spent so much time castigating Waite and warning people against him and all sorts of other things, parodying him in his novels and things like this. He even wrote an obituary for Waite and called it Dead Waite. And it was before Waite had died. So Crowley really had it in for Waite. And I think as a result, partly, a lot of people now, 100 years on, really think of Waite as a sort of dry, stuffy, pseudo-academic, English tweed-wearing, dull, boring, I don't know what words you might use. I mean, and perhaps in the comments, people can think about what words come into their head when they think about A.E. Waite, if anything. But the thing is that Waite was he wrote endless poetry about the fairy realm, about going off with the fairies and the fair maidens and things like this. He had a very fey soul, a pagan soul, in fact. And while his writing may be peculiar even for his time, it isn't wrong, it isn't confusing, it's just dense and in a particular style. So what we did was we read and read and read, and then we started to write and write and write. Then we went back to pictorial key, and then we wrote a bit more about pictorial key, then went back to the books and so forth. So, Waite of Rivendell, that's very good indeed. Yeah, I mean, Crowley came up with a lot of names for him as well. So, let's get on to some actual interesting stuff then. So, just to finish the story about the book and the course will start on March the 22nd, and there's a special offer on that, and we'll have a promo video and so forth coming out tomorrow. And what I'm going to do is spend 10 weeks basically going through the material and the important key points of what we've discovered, what we found, and how our understanding of the deck has changed remarkably through this work. And it has made clear every single symbol in the deck, particularly the major arcana and some of the minor arcana to some extent, but certainly the major arcana are a illustration of a coherent, consistent, congruent, and comprehensive spiritual path. This is what Waite was going for. And it is remarkable that the only biography of Waite, there's only one. There's plenty of Crowley. I've got a load on my right-hand Crowley shelf here. Perdurabo, very good, by Richard Kosinski. All of the other versions, my favourite was the John Simmons one, The Great Beast. But so Gilbert's book, Bob Gilbert's book, and we talked to Bob Gilbert, particularly when we were doing Abiding in the Sanctuary, and this is the only biography, and it's out of print. It's been out of print a long time. It was published in, when was this published? And this is one of the two people that designed the deck. So there were only two people involved really in the deck, and one of the two people involved in the world's most popular and easily recognized tarot deck has had one biography. Sorry, I was just noticing, would some moderator please go to the old live site and let people know about the video? Okay. Yeah. So if someone could paste it again. Abiding in the Sanctuary is available, and we still have copies of it. So that's on the Tarot Association website if you want to get a copy. Thank you for posting that. Yeah, we did try and post it in the other group, although it may have gone up with the comments, so I do apologise for that. So this book was published in 1987. So what's that? 3 years to 90, 13, and another 25. So 13, 25, 30, 38 years ago. Can you believe it? So 38 years ago. So just to answer a question in the chat, the 2-year course, our Academia course, is a on-demand course. You can start that whenever you want. The 10-week course for Spiritual Key to the Tarot will start in March the 22nd. There'll be details here and everywhere else immediately following this announcement. So almost 40 years, and no one has published another biography of Waite. And there's some, not many, but there's one particular issue that in here and a couple of other academic sources more recently referred to Waite as illegitimate, that his mother and father weren't married because Bob Gilbert hadn't found the marriage certificate. And in Tali's research, she found the marriage certificate because she was used to looking for For example, variations of surname. And when we discussed that with Bob Gilbert, it was clear why he'd missed it. And so the marriage certificate is actually under Waite, not Waite with an E. So there has been a lot of neglect, really, forgetfulness of Waite, the other person in the design of the deck, and for various reasons. So we collated together things like the Hermetic Papers. Again, Bob Gilbert is the main biographer, and he's got most of the materials for Waite. Waite selected Masonic Papers, and so forth. So let me just give you one example of opening up Waite that's in Spiritual Key to the Tarot, and then I'll show you some more books and talk about a few more things and so forth. This video run for about an hour, and I also want to leave some time for your questions as well. The book will come out about halfway through the course, towards the end of the course, because I want to pack a little bit of extra material in it, particularly for practical readings that won't take too long, and then it'll be published on Amazon fairly quickly, within the next 6 to 10 weeks. It's ready to publish now. I just keep wanting to tweak it as we put the course together as well. So let me tell you about one particular thing, and then I'm going to tell you about a second particular thing, and that's it for our session today in terms of understanding Waite. One of the main things with Waite and with the cards is sacramentalism, the whole concept of sacramentalism. And Waite was a Christian mystic, and when he designed this deck, it was designed as a deck by a Christian mystic, particularly the major arcana, but not a Catholic, not a Christian, and not a mystic in its more generalist sense. Waite was a very, very particular sort of mystic, very particular sort of Christian, and very particular sort of Catholic. What was a Catholic Christian mystic doing in the Golden Dawn? Why did he spend the rest of his life setting up the Fellowship of the Rosy Cross? What was he doing, messing around with fairies and Arthurian legends? Well, the answer is because Waite was a sacramentalist. Let's just put him in that box for the moment. And as such, he believed, well, one step back, he was interested in the truth. He wanted to know the truth of existence. That drove him in everything he did. It drove him in his romantic notions, it drove him in his interests, it drove him in everything. He wanted to know what was going on, what was the nature of reality. And he approached that through any of the what he called byways to understanding, because he felt that if the knowledge was out there, it wouldn't necessarily be in the church, it wouldn't be in science. He studied it in science and the church and so forth. And then he studied it in alchemy, he studied it in the Grail myth, he studied it in Rosicrucianism, in numerology, in astrology, in tarot, in the Golden Dawn, in ritual, and so forth. And he studied it wherever he could find it. And this is why his books are quite dense, because it's a case of he was trying to get to the truth of existence, and he just took from everywhere. And in the end, he found it in a Catholic sensibility in Christian terminology, but he saw all of that as sacraments and symbology in the same way and equal to the tarot symbols and alchemy and any other way of understanding the universe. So that's the that's really the key to unlock Waite's contradictions in. Sorry, I just read a comment and it's thrown me a moment. Right, so the cards are seen as sacraments. That is to say, they are something that are able to connect us to the divine unity. Waite was very interested in the concept of unity, and he put that in one particular card, which was the wheel. To Waite, the wheel was the most important card in the sense of it depicts a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. There's a sense of seeing that unity in all things. And to Waite, as we work up the tree of life, which he saw as a very useful map, we start in the world and then we work upwards. We sort of work upwards through the deck itself. And so each card, particularly the major arcana, but to some extent the minor arcana, provide us a illustration, a map of our mystical and spiritual experience in the Western esoteric and history system, expressed in compellingly Catholic Christian terminology, but they can equally be expressed, to Waite at least, in any other way, particularly the tarot. So let me show you a few more books, and then we're going to talk about the second thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of understanding Waite. So here's another beautiful book, The Brotherhood of the Rosy Cross. I particularly like the older books that don't have the edged paper, so they have the rough uncut paper. And so this book was given someone in 1931. So you can see the Rosy Cross, the Christian. Yeah, don't worry, I do smell the books. Some of them, particularly the second-hand ones, can sometimes smell of cigarettes and incense. That just really goes well with the Hermetic philosophy symbolized. You can see how the sun is on the rose and the moon is on the lily. Then we have sulfur and mercury, the three alchemical elements at the bottom, and then the planets. And so you'll see these obviously on the magician card, for example, where the sun and the moon are united. Oh, yay! Well, I've got a troll. Well, that's good. I can probably get rid of the troll. Let's have a look. I'll just hide the user on the channel. There we go. Yeah, I've never had to do that before. That's cool. So the collected poems, volume 1 and volume 2. The reason I lost track is because I noticed that there was someone misbehaving in the chat. So I do apologise to everyone for that. So the collected poems, another wonderful book here. And the world's a dream, the swooning castle, the strange houses of sleep. he had a very, very poetic soul. And while his poems may not be, they are somewhat overwrought even for the time, but they are quite moving, they're quite meaningful, restored to light. They are really, really seeking everything in Waite. He is seeking, particularly in his poetry, he is constantly calling out for unity. He constantly wants to find a sense of unity with the divine. And on his grave is Est una sola res, that there is only the one thing. And that is another important thing that we talk about in the course and in the book, that his quest was for unity. It was for a singular experience of losing oneself entirely in reality, in truth. So it was the mystical quest, it was the spiritual quest. And his poetry attests to that, and more importantly for us today, his tarot deck attests to this. The course will be weekly. It'll be on a Sunday. I'll be doing it live, and we've got a special discount. I'll put the link in the chat window when we're done. And and I'll be doing it live. It will be available once it's recorded live for everyone. But if you want to join me on the course, I'd really hope to see you there, because then we can have discussions and answer your questions and do some practical stuff personally, one-to-one, in a group, whilst we do the live sessions. I love to teach like that and to share things like that. It's the best way of us all learning together. So the deck, this card, for example, and Waite describes this in pictorial key, but you would miss it if you blinked, or you would miss it if you, more importantly, glazed over with Waite's writing, is the mind conjuring images. Waite sees this card as symbolic of the process of the human mind conjuring images inside itself to make sense of reality. And that is what is going on the card. And he explains it. He explains why it is the light being reflected. The light is the light of consciousness, of awareness. It has no size, location, or structure. It is light that is everywhere. And the moon is a fixed shape and body, and it reflects that light. It reflects that light in the same way that the mind and the unconscious generates images in our own likeness based on our own memories, our own subconscious, our own mental structure. And that is what this card is all about. And Waite explains it, explains the symbolism in that context in pictorial key. It is all there, but it's difficult if you can't put it together with the sun card. Now let me just move these 1 second. That's that. In Abiding in the Sanctuary, when he came to the moon card, there's the wheel card that I was talking about with the sense of unity. Most divine of the cards, according to Waite at least. Let me just find the moon here for you. So there's one sketch of the moon. Can you see how it's got the sun on it? It's got the sun on it. Because to Waite, it was far more important, and there's a couple of coloured versions of it. I love this card with the poppets on it. Trennick was wounded in the First World War and came back to London. So this has the poppets on it. puppet's obviously symbolic of memory and altered states and so forth. So this is Abiding in the Sanctuary. This is the Waite-Trinic tarot. This is the tarot images that were not meant as a deck. I've got a horrible feeling at some point someone is going to try and produce this as a deck from the images in the British Museum, and it was not meant as a deck. It is meant as contemplative images within ritual, and that's why we had them produced on this high gloss paper, so that you can have that experience of meditating and contemplating on them the way they were designed, to be used. So sacramentalism then is a way of seeing the universe in a particular way, that everything is an exemplar, everything is a gateway to the underlying unity underneath all things. And that is what Waite was interested in. That is what he wanted to put in his tarot deck. And that is what he did put in his tarot deck. So they would make an amazing deck, but they should not be made into an amazing deck. One of the other reasons I suspect that Llewellyn would be hesitant about publishing our finished work, when we didn't talk about the content, we just talked about the complexity and the nature of it for a general unintroduced market. One thing is that Waite did not want this tarot deck to fall into the hands of fortune tellers, of tarot card readers. And when we think about that now and think about that notion now, that Waite did not want this, and he mentions it in Pictorial Key. He actually does say this. And so that's not the sort of thing you can then put into a book of publishers who sell tarot decks. But without explaining it, without understanding it and having some means of, like a course, of actually contextualizing it more widely. Because I'm a tarot card reader. I've read tarot cards for 45 years now. But Waite did not want them to be used like that. And then you might say, well, why did he publish a deck then? Why did he bother? Was it just for the money? Was it for fame and fortune? But that is because we are thinking about it from now. And this is something we did in Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. We ignored the last 100 years or so, went back to 1909 and just stuck our heads there and looked at it that way. And that's where all of the research and discoveries actually came from, and the insights. Similarly, with the Waite book, when he published this, we didn't have all of the newspapers and the streaming media and the internet and everything else. When he published this, it was only advertised in the Occult Review in London, and that had subscribers, and Waite knew and thought and wouldn't have no reason otherwise to believe that the deck would go to people who were already regularly reading and studying about the occult. It wouldn't have flooded out to the mass market. It might have got into some shops, but it wouldn't have got onto, being pirated in China and around the world, left, right, and centre as a deck. He wouldn't have thought anything along those lines. He would have published this knowing that it was generally going to other occultists, other esotericists, other educated people in the world of the occult, other Freemasons, other Theosophists, people who already had some education in that world, in the world that this was going to. In exactly the same way that Pamela Colman Smith drew the cards, and for example, as we make clear in Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, knowing that everyone had recognized this as Ellen Terry playing Juliet, and this is why we have Cain and Abel down in the bottom, because the quote is, "I would sooner bash out my head with my kinsman's bones, which is a reference to Cain and Abel. It's in the play Romeo and Juliet. And she wouldn't have been hiding that symbolism. She would have known that that would have been understood by people, in the same way that a lot of the cards would have been understood by people at the time. And so Waite wanted this as a sacramental object, and that's why he didn't make it very clear in Pictorial Key to the Tarot, because he didn't need to. He wasn't writing a tarot card book for today, for a whole load of fortune tellers, people using it, like myself, for tarot card readings to the sheer scale that we have now. That wouldn't have been in Waite's mind. It wasn't even in Waite's mind shortly before his death, because we have his thoughts and his record in his autobiography, Shadows of Life and Thought. And he mentions the tarot in that, and he mentions his delightful experiment with Pamela Colman Smith. And some people have then taken that to be quite dismissive of Pamela Colman Smith, but it wasn't. He felt that it was a delightful experiment, and that's all it was to the both of them. It was only a small thing in their lives. Although, when Waite had opportunity, it became a very big thing in his life, as part of the rituals of the FRC. So, what we've done then is we put things together, and this is both in the course and in the book. And for example, Grand Orient, who was Waite, and who Waite refers to in Pictorial Key as Grand Orient, but he's actually talking about himself in the Complete Manual of Occult Divination. He actually has meanings for the cards in a lot of different worlds. For example, the world of everyday life, the world of religious life, and the world of the spiritual life. And he gives an English method of fortune telling by cards, and he gives playing card meanings and so forth. And because he wasn't that interested, particularly in fortune telling, that's why in Pictorial Key he refers to this book, where he was selling this to a wider market for people interested in fortune telling. And he did it under a pseudonym, the Grand Orient. But what I'm going to do is just pull this into our book so it can rest now where it should be, particularly for us fortune tellers and card readers, with the notes for Pictorial Key to the Tarot. It will go at the end of those, along with the Golden Dawn notes and along with our commentary against each card. So every card has its commentary, and the video that I'm going to release that I wished I should have been able to have done if I could have got my OBS to work. But I'll make that live immediately afterwards. It does show some pages from the book on the full card, making it clear that is Christ. But Christ, and this is why it needs contextualizing, is a symbol of our soul in search of reality. And Waite saw it like that. When Waite said that, for example, the Sun card was also Christ triumphant, he didn't mean it was Christ. He meant that both Christ and the Sun and all solar deities and the child on the horse are all symbolic of the soul trying to reconnect to the divine source, the particular stage with a particular experience, which we also make clear in the book. And that's why it's not good for a mass market just to sort of put a book out and say, well, obviously the the Son is Christ, according to Waite. He wrote that, but he was also writing for people who would already understand the idea of symbolism, the idea of sacramentalism, the idea of the universe being an exemplar of something else beyond it, and everything being symbolic of that. And this is where his interest in Western esotericism comes from, that he was trying to see through correspondence through all of these great stories, great narratives, myths and legends, ancient Egypt, the Grail legends, tarot. He saw a recurrent pattern, a universal pattern that he was trying to understand. And that is really what the tarot deck is. It's a series of codified images of the unity of all existence, truth and reality expressed in symbolic terms. And you know, when people often quote the tarot is symbolism, it needs no other language, that Waite said, well, they tend to think that that is about the tarot, that the tarot is symbolism and needs no other language. What Waite was actually saying is symbolism is the language of the universe. Tarot just happens to be one example of that, and it needs no other explanation because the symbolism is the explanation of the pattern of the universe. And this is something we try to thread out through the book. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about, as well as sacramentalism on one hand, is the Shekinah. To Waite, he had the concept of the Shekinah, and he mentions it very clearly a lot in Pictorial Key to the Tarot, but because it's, I guess, for people who already understand a bit about the Kabbalah and so forth, it's out of context, so it doesn't quite hold together if you don't have the context, particularly that we tried to give in Spiritual Key to the Tarot. The Shekinah to Waite was the relationship of the divine in the everyday world. And so he saw the high priestess in particular as representative of the Shekinah, or the idea of the Shekinah. In Jewish mysticism, in the Kabbalah, the Shekinah is like the presence of God in our everyday world, through and often depicted in a feminine form. So to Waite, the feminine form was often used for the Shekinah, and the star is seen as the Shekinah as well, as another level of the Shekinah. So we have sacramentalism, we have the Shekinah, we have, I think we've listed 7 concepts in the book, and will be discussed on the course. The main keys that you need to really unlock Waite's work and unlock the tarot, particularly the major arcana, but also the minor arcana as well. So we're down to our last 10 minutes. If people have questions, and I'm just going to look through the chat here. So if you have questions, what else was I going to show you? Oh, right, just very quickly. Yes, please ask away, Melinda. So, again, people won't know, but Arthur Edward Waite was very much a fan of the pulp periodicals of the time, and collected them and wrote about them. And so he sort of liked his picture books of the time. And this has actually got some interesting stuff that Waite wrote that applies to tarot and the symbolism of architecture. So we have used all sorts of sources. We've used every single source that we can. For example, the Quest of the Golden Stairs is something that people would not be necessarily aware of. And this is a very over-romanticized fairy story, an elfin story, sort of like a bit Silmarillion, J.R.R. Tolkien style. And this is Arthur Edward Waite as well. We've also used the rituals of the FRC, the Fellowship of the Rosy Cross. These are as so. And we then tried to provide things like a reading list and a selected bibliography for Waite as well. And at the back of the book, and we'll mention it in the course, I can give people reading lists and particular sections of all of Waite's books, like all of the ones over here and all of the ones down on the floor as well, in order to guide you through the key concepts and where they are in Waite. We've had to spend 10 years reading Waite, so you don't have to, so that you can find the important bits on Shekinah, on the Holy Grail, on alchemy, on mysticism, on spirituality, on initiation, on all of these things that we find in the deck through Waite's writings, copious writings, and he wrote an awful lot. So what other questions do we have? He worked on material with Arthur Machen, and again, don't know where my copy is. It's down here somewhere. He wrote a book called was it The Houses of Light or Strange Houses of Light or something, with Machen, because they went out on a several-week bender, and a lot of womanizing seemed to go on, and they wrote letters to each other and did a pastiche of it as if they were mystical brothers in a spiritual order. And it's really interesting reading. The live course will be weekly. It will start on the 22nd of March, just after the spring equinox. It will be on Sundays or Saturdays, whatever the 22nd is, in order to, and I'll do it at 10 o'clock, so it's better for US folk who are 5 to 6 hours behind as well. Shekinah, yep, that's a good spelling. Obviously, it's transliteration of the Hebrew characters. So that's cool. 22nd is Saturday, thank you. Can the cards be used as talismanic images? Yes, very much so. Waite, really. And again, we explain this in the book. It's also in Abiding. There's a wonderful quote in a strange book that was written by Trinick. The Fire-Tried Stone. And he wrote something that was about having the images revealed within a ritual. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it offhand, but basically they were contextualized within esoteric ritual, within initiatory ritual. And then the card would be shown, a veil would be drawn back, the image would be there, and it would have a big effect, like we designed our Tarot of Everlasting Day Union deck to have in ritual. And we are working currently on an inner deck for that as well, which will only be used with our magical order within a ritual context, so that it allows us to use the cards as sacraments, as Waite originally intended for the deck itself. This image would have been revealed, as it was in the Golden Dawn as well, as a sacred image and it would collapse all of the teaching unconsciously of the ritual itself, and it would bring about a state change and an initiation for the person as well. Again, we cover all of this in the course. The links will be available. I'll also put the other video up that will show you some of the books, some of the pages from the Spiritual Key to the Tarot on the Fool in particular, so you get an idea of really how much information there is to show you exactly what Waite intended by every image, every symbol in the deck itself. So let's finish off with any questions. We've had the spelling of Shekinah, and thank you all so much for bearing with me with the video. It's only the second live I've done on YouTube, and the first one I did directly like this one through the webcam straight to YouTube. This time I wanted to try and get a bit clever, and YouTube thwarted me in that. So thank you for hopping across into this. The book will be published probably in 6 weeks' time. Probably, it might be sooner, it might be a little bit later, but it will be halfway through the course or towards the end of the course itself, because obviously I'm just wanting to use the opportunity to add in a load more useful information, because I intend to use it as well. It will be my reference book for the Waite-Smith Tarot. The way I want to use it, with Waite's words and Waite's intent and Waite's wisdom to hand in the cards that he designed with Pamela Coleman-Smith for the miners in particular, and who obviously did all of the artwork for it as well. And of course, it is Pamela Coleman-Smith's anniversary of her birthday today, so we should wish Pamela Coleman-Smith a happy birthday as well. We covered more of her work in Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, so it just seemed a nice thing to announce the Waite side of it, the completion of the trilogy on the deck today as well. So thanks a lot for your attention, and the course is $189. It's $18.90 per class over 10 weeks, so it's $189 US dollars with the special offer. Once I've done the live course, the recorded course will be available on demand, but that'll be about $255. It's about a 25% saving to take it live, and also you get the wonderful pleasure of my company, even if I get thrown by trolls. But thank you for bearing with me with that as well. So thanks a lot. Have a good rest of the late afternoon for those in the US. Have a good late evening for us in the UK. Thank you for being here if you're on the other side of the time zone, and I look forward to releasing the trailer video, the promo video for the course, and all of the details, and look forward to seeing you on the course as well. So thanks a lot, and any questions, just drop them here, drop them into our Facebook group. I'm on those things too often, and we'll try and answer you as well. So thanks a lot, everyone, and have a good time. And as ever, the worker is hidden in the workshop.